Hi guys, welcome back. In today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to create this corporate flyer. So without further ado, let's jump right into this tutorial. So the first thing is to set up your canvas. And for this corporate flyer, we are going to use a 6x8 with a 300 resolution. So now that we have established the size of our flyer, I'm gonna go to my folder and I'm going to bring in the background image. So I'm going to just drag and drop this into our folder, and I am going to go ahead and scale it like so. I'm going to double click to deselect. So now that we have our image in place, we want to turn this into a black and white. So you want to make sure your layer is selected, go to image and then adjustment and choose black and white. I'm going to click OK. You can do the same step by clicking on your adjustment levels and choosing black and white. So I just wanted you to know the two options that are available for you to do that. I'm going to click on my layer and we want to take down the opacity. So we have something like this. I'm going to deselect, and then we want to go ahead and now add the different elements that we want to incorporate into our background. So with this, I want to show you how you can use your shapes to achieve this effect. So when you go to your shapes, you want to click on rounded rectangle tool. And the other thing you want to do before we draw our rectangle is to make sure that your radius is at 50 pixels. And we are just going to draw just a rectangle. Once the rectangle is drawn, you realize that a new layer is created in your layers panel. Now, what if you don't like this color? You can go ahead and change it. Under your property, you see a box that is the shape filled type. So you want to double click on this and change the color here, something like this. But I want to keep this one black, so I'm just going to come out of that. And I'm going to select this and I'm going to go ahead and just rotate like that. Oh, by the way, if you click on your shape and you don't see this, you don't see the shape activated with these white square corners, it means that your auto check is off and your show transform is off. So you want to make sure that you turn those two on. If you're using an older version, you will have to press Ctrl T to activate your transform tool. But if you already have a newer version, you want to make sure your auto select and your show transform controls are all checked. So now that we have this, we want to move our shape up here. I'm going to do something like this. I want to move it in a little more. So if you want to scale it, you just have to pull one end and it scales for you. And if you want to rotate again, you can do the same thing. I'm going to make a duplicate of this. To make a duplicate, you select your layer, you drag it to the plus icon. The other way to also duplicate is right click and go to duplicate layer. You can do the same, or you can press Command J and it will make a duplicate for you. I'm going to delete that. So with our duplicate made, I'm going to drag this one here and I'm going to set it in the opposite direction. I'm going to set it parallel to the other one. So we have something like this. But this one, I want to scale it even bigger. So I'm just going to hold and I'm just going to use my magnifying glass. So we zoom out. I'm going to go ahead and reselect and then just pull it out like this. Select your layer and then you double click on the layers thumbnail, and a window pops up for you, and you can choose whatever color you want. I want a little bit more muted red, not too bright. So something like this is good. And I'm going to click OK. And now we want to create the third rectangle. So I'm going to make a duplicate. So Command J to make a duplicate. And I'm going to move this here like that. And I'm going to double click on the thumbnail again. And we're going to change that color to white. And we are going to move it and set it here. So with this set, we want to go ahead and add one more rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead, click on my white layer, Command J to make a duplicate, and I'm going to move that and set that somewhere here. So I'm going to offset that one like that. And I want to change the color. So we do the same thing. We double click on our thumbnail, and we want to go ahead and choose something like this greenish color. I love it. I'm going to double click and make it a little bit deeper. So now we want to go ahead and cut out this white area inside the red. So to do that, we are going to click on the white layer, holding down Command key. We are going to select that boundary. So once we make the selection, we're going to turn off the white layer so we can see this. And you want to make sure now you're on the red layer, and then you can pick your eraser and you want to click OK. You want to convert this into a shape. And now we're just going to cut this out or clean it off. And I'm going to press Command D to deselect. We want to go ahead and bring in one more image. So I'm going to go back to my folder, and I'm going to drag this and drop into Photoshop. And we want to go ahead and move that layer beneath. I want this female on the opposite side. So to do that, you want to go to your Edit, Transform, and you want to click on Flip Horizontal. So now we have the reverse. So we have this, and I'm going to scale it down a little so we get the message across that she's having a conversation with a client. So I'm just going to do that. We want to go ahead and cut off all the excess area that we don't need. I'm going to go ahead and activate the white rectangle, and then I'm going to hold down Command and select that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off again, that layer, and then you want to make sure you are on the lasso tool, Command, and then we're going to right click and then select a copy, and then we are going to turn off the original. We want to go ahead and also add a gradient effect on our subject. So I'm going to click on our layer, our subject layer, and I'm going to go to my adjustment and choose gradient. And notice that the color that is the default is red, and it's because my foreground is red. So to change that, I can double click on my gradient, double click on the stop, double click on the color, and I can either choose any color here, or I can choose this particular color. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this color so it matches, or you can just use your color picker. So you want to also make sure that the far end of your color, you change that to black. And I'm going to click OK and OK and OK. So now we have this sort of effect on our flyer, but I want it to be a little bit more lighter. So I'm going to take down the opacity so we can still see our subject a little bit more. I want to add a little bit of a depth effect though to the red. So I'm going to click on my red layer. I'm going to double click to bring up the layer style, and then I want to add an inner shadow. So I'm going to double click on the inner shadow so I can begin to play with the options. I'm going to take my opacity all the way up so you can see the cool effect that it creates. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So it creates almost like a 3D depth effect, and I love it. So with this set for us, we want to go ahead. I'm going to double click on my color again, and I think that my color is too dark, so I'm going to change it. So we have something like this, and this pops. This is good. So with this set, we want to go ahead and now begin to add the logo and all of that jazz. So I'm going to first of all create a circle. I'm going to go ahead and select my shape, and then I'm going to create a little circle right there, like that. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a duplicate of that. So I'm going to select that ellipse and move it to my plus. I'm going to zoom in a little so we can see. And then I'm going to select the other one. I'm going to scale that down a little more. So I'm going to double click on the color. First of all, we need to click check to accept our change. I'm going to click on that layer, double click on the color. I'm going to change that to white, and we are going to move it some way like that. I'm going to scale it just a little bit more. And I think that I want to go ahead and zoom into this area so we can all see it close up. And then I'm going to click on my move tool. I'm going to set this in the right place. And then I'm going to click on my command, make a selection, but then go back to the red ellipse and then turn off the white one. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use my eraser, activate, okay, and then I'm going to erase that. So I'm going to press Command D to deselect. So we have something like this. I'm going to scale it down a little. And then I want to go ahead and create a duplicate of this. I'm going to press Command J to make a duplicate. I'm going to set that like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and double click on my foreground background default. I want a black with my paint bucket. I'm going to fill that in. And then when we zoom out a little, we have that. So that becomes our logo. We are going to click on our text tool, and I am going to select a font, which is Century Gothic. And I'm going to make sure that my foreground is black. I'm going to type in the word on point. Oops, I need to make it all caps. So you can either retype it, you can click on all caps and it will turn everything into all caps for you. I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to go ahead and change this color to red. And we have something like this, and I'm going to set it right there. With my foreground as white, we are just going to go ahead and begin to type. So you notice that you cannot see the text, and the reason being that the text is below the black rectangle. So we are going to go ahead and move that layer above so we can see it. And we are going to go ahead and scale this. So I'm just eyeballing like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and highlight. I want to change it to bold. And I'm going to move that in place. I'm going to go back and select my type tool, or you can call it text tool. And we are going to double click and begin to type the rest of the information. go ahead and move the text and set it like so. And I'm going to go ahead and move my top text below. And then I'm going to highlight business and I'm going to make that red. So the next thing is to keep adding a few more info and we'll be done. So I'm going to type in about us. I'm going to highlight and change the color to black and highlight just the us and change that to the red. And then I'm going to set it somewhere here. You want to go ahead and add a little blurb about the company. So since this is just a tutorial, I am just going to pick a default text that Photoshop already has to use as a placeholder. So I'm going to make sure my foreground is white. So I just flipped through my foreground and background icon to get it to white. Now I'm just going to go to, so I'm going to click once in on my canvas, and then I'm going to go ahead to type and then click on paste Lorraine, and Photoshop is going to put in a default text. It's too big, so I'm going to click inside the text and then Command A to select everything, and then I'm going to go ahead and reduce the font style to, let's say, 0.6, and I'm going to make sure that my my font is adjusted to the left. And now I'm just going to go ahead and break it apart. So now that I have it all set, I'm going to move it down. I'm going to scale it a little bit more and set it somewhere here. And then we're going to move the About Us. We're going to set it up like that. And I'm just going to move this a little and I'm going to set it right there. And I'm going to move the About Us. So with this in place, I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of our About Us. Command J to make a duplicate. I'm going to move that and set that somewhere here. And we are going to rescale and then change this information to Get in Touch. And I'm going to highlight the touch and change it to white. And now I'm going to go back to my image and I'm going to bring in the phone, which will be used for contact. And I'm just going to scale it down. I'm going to double click. We want to make a selection of just the phone. So I'm going to use my selection tool and I'm going to click in the 3 areas that I want, but you need to hold down your shift so you can select all 3 areas. And I'm going to right click and create a copy, and I'm going to turn off the original. With my move tool, I'm just going to go ahead and scale, set it right here for now. We're going to go back and then we are going to go for our location, which will be used for our address. So I'm going to do the same thing. You can actually get the location icon online PNG with no background. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to pick my quick selection tool. I'm going to select this, hold down my shift and select that as well. I'm going to right click and create a copy. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the original. With my move tool, I'm going to rescale this down and set it right there. I'm going to use my magnifying glass plus selected and I'm going to zoom in. And we're going to go ahead and fill in this information. So I'm going to move my I'm going to go ahead and move the phone and scale it. And I'm just going to move it in place like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the location. I am going to rescale it and set it. With my text tool, I'm going to click and type in the 1-800 number. We're going to rescale this. And I want to go ahead and highlight and change the font style to regular. So it's much more thinner than the title. And I'm just going to move that and set it right there, like so. Make a copy, Command J. So I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to click on my layer, Command J, make a copy, pull that down. And then I'm going to highlight. We're going to highlight and put in our address. So I'm going to type in something, just going to make something up. So the last thing that we are going to add will go into this red slot. So I'm going to select my ellipse shape and I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle just like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a duplicate, Command J. I made a duplicate and then I'm going to flip my foreground to white. With my paint bucket, I'm going to go ahead, click OK, and then fill that in. And then with my marquee tool, I'm going to go ahead and cut this rectangle in half, and I'm going to delete that portion, Command D to deactivate. And now we want to take the opacity of this down to like so. So it's almost like a gray on top of the black, but we want it to be very faint. So we have something like this. I'm going to select both, Command J to make a duplicate, and I'm going to move that down. And I'm going to press Command J, make another duplicate, and set that down here. So now we have these 3 slots. We need to fill it up. So I'm going to go back to my images and I'm going to bring in this thumbnail. Now this thumbnail has no background. I'm going to rescale it a little, pull it up. And notice it's behind the red layer and everything else. So I want to bring it all the way up to the top. And I'm going to rescale, double click to accept scale. Now I'm going to click on it. I want to change the color to white. So I'll go to Image Adjustment and choose Hue Saturation. Take the lightness all the way to 100, click OK, and we're going to move that and set that in the middle. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to rescale, double click to accept, and set it in place. We're going to go back to our folder, click, and we are going to go ahead and bring this in as well. We're going to rescale. I'm going to move that here. I'm going to scale it down. And in order to take off the background, I'm going to use my quick select tool, select subject. It doesn't work as it should. So what we are going to do is Command D to deselect. With our quick select tool, we are going to click inside those little areas to make our selection of all the orange areas. So I'm going to hold down my shift and I'm going to select the rest of the areas. And I'm going to right click, make a copy. We are going to turn off the original. Now we have no background. With our move tool, we are going to rescale, and we want to make sure that this is at the very top. So if it's not, we want to move it all the way up to the top. I'm going to set it here, rescale, and we're going to put it inside the circle. I'm going to double click. Now the same thing we did with the thumbnail, we're going to go to Image, Adjustment, Hue and Saturation, take that all the way to 100, click OK, and we have that also in place. Now the last thing that we are going to bring in is the magnifying glass. I'm going to pull that also in, and we're going to do the same thing with the quick select tool. We are going to go ahead and select the white, hold down my shift and select the other areas that we want. We're going to right click, make a copy, and turn off the original. With my move tool, I'm going to rescale, and we are going to set that in the ellipse. So we are going to go to Image, Adjustment, Hue, Saturation, and we're going to take the lightness all the way to 100, and we're going to click OK. We are going to go ahead and add the last text to the flyer. So I'm going to click on my text tool, and we are just going to have some text beneath these little icons. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my text. I'm going to highlight this is the final flyer, guys. It's very simple to do. Sometimes it can look very complicated, but these are just simple shapes that are being moved and rotated, twisted, sliced to create a very cool effect. So any template you see online, you can actually recreate it if you study the different shapes or if you study how it's done. So I hope you found this tutorial very helpful. Please like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell for all future uploads. And as always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.